Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Random Vlogging. This is this show where I give my opinion on things that interest me, and this particular random vlogging, you can actually thank at Black Wraith, I think is the name. Because he actually asked me a question on Twitter and actually inspired this. So thank you, Black Wraith. As kind of an update, really quick to the channel, I do have a lot more Play Your Phase. I have one that's actually all ready to go. I just have to record it, and then I have a lot more characters to create. So that's going to keep going. I've just been very much under the weather recently. And I think 2 or 3 days ago, I finally got into the Twitch Sings beta, which is just karaoke on Twitch. And so I've been doing that a couple hours every day simply because it's really good for me. If you hadn't noticed, my stutter is not quite as pronounced, and that's because I've been singing. And it also is a good de-stressor for me, so it's a really good thing for me to do that. Unfortunately, I can't upload any of that stuff to YouTube. I'm pretty sure I'll get copyright struck immediately. But if you go to my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/TrainerJody, I have VODs of me singing quite a few songs, and even have some duets and stuff on there, so check that out. All right, so today I am going to be talking about a thing that I actually said that I wasn't going to talk about anymore, and I'll get into a little bit of that as to why, but it's ending, and so I feel... and I got asked about it. I feel that I have I have an obligation to talk about it now that it is ending. And I kind of knew this was going to happen. I don't think too many people are that surprised that it's happening. So what I'm talking about is Alpha, Legendary's streaming service. They created a couple years ago. I believe it was 2016, halfway through 2016. So it made it for about 2.5 years, which, to be blunt, is longer than I thought it would. And I'll go into why I think it lasted as long as it did in a little bit. But I first want to mention, when Alpha first came out, there are videos on this channel, if you look for them, where I ask people specifically, please don't support Alpha. It goes against everything that Geek and Sundry was founded for, and on the Geek and Sundry Reddit, and I believe on the Critical Role Reddit too, which are the only Reddit forums I've ever actually posted to. I did some pretty deep dives into what exactly Alpha was. I actually did a deep dive into financial aspects because I have a degree in business, and even before I got my degree this past November, and even before then, I'm really good with business stuff. I ran sales for multi-million-dollar stores. I was sent to other stores to fix them, and I did remarkably well. As long as I wasn't, I had one store I couldn't fix, and it wasn't because my techniques didn't work. It was because the store manager actively sabotaged me, so that I couldn't get promoted, because then he would have lost me, and I was doing his job for him. So business is something that I know really well, and I've done everything from just running sales to everything for the business, like paying bills. Like I've delivered checks for the electricity of one of the stores I worked for, and I filled out the accounting books by hand. So I I understand business. I understand costs. I now have a degree in it. And even back then when I was talking about it and I didn't have the degree, I knew this stuff really well. And so I did a deep dive and I said, alpha it's a bad idea. They're lying to us, trying to sell it as a necessity that their Twitch channel isn't making them enough money. And I actually went into how much money they theoretically could be making, and my estimations were relatively accurate. Was there a chance that I was off by big numbers? Of course. I did not actually have access to their books. No one at Geek and Sundry actually knew how much they were making. Only the people at Legendary, because none of the sub money, none of the alpha money went to Geek and Sundry. It went to Legendary, and then Legendary would take however much they wanted and then give Geek and Sundry and alpha a budget. So they had no idea how much money they were making, and that was done on purpose. But anyway, so I did this. I was very, very vocal about it. And there was a video Taliesin Jaffe made where he said, hey, and this is after Marisha had taken over as creative director, I believe it was, creative something, at Geek and Sundry, and was running Alpha. And he said, please give Alpha a chance. There's a lot of really hard people working for it. And I made this comment on there, and I did the same thing. I said, you know what? I'd love to, and I understand that you care about the people that work there and everything. I can't support this. It's a bad idea. It was a bad idea when it started. It caused Geek and Sundry to lose all but one of their staff. It screwed up the Twitch channel rather majorly. It caused a lot of shows to get canceled. Like, it was a bad idea. And it's never going to be able to support itself, which turns out to be true. Turns out to be prophetic. And so I did this, and I found out my comment was, I don't know if it was deleted or just muted or something, but no one could actually see my comment. What had happened is someone had gone in and manually hidden the comment. So if I went on my own account and looked, I could find my comment. But I tested it by just going to YouTube not being signed in. My comment didn't show up anywhere. And so I felt that I had pissed someone off majorly, because Taliesin Jaffe is not someone I personally know, but the little bit I understand about him, he's not the kind of person that would just kind of silence you over nothing. Like, I really think he's the kind of person that in order for him to feel that, no, you need to just stop talking, you really have to do something wrong. And so I kind of realized that, and I have some friends that actually know the cast personally, and I put some feelers out and stuff like that, and they didn't give me a firm answer, but I got the feeling that I pissed off the cast pretty bad, because I was bad-mouthing something that Marisha was putting tons of time into, and everybody was working, and I just kept bad-mouthing it. For good reasons in my personal opinion, but I was still the enemy. And so I made a video that I believe is still private. I don't think I ever, where I said, you know what, I'm really sorry. I was crying because I was so upset that I, upset these people that I sincerely admire. And I said, I was only doing this because I wanted you guys to get better. I didn't want to see this tear apart the channel and hurt people. But I said then I'm not going to speak about this ever again, or I'm not going to speak against it ever again, because obviously that has not been taken well, and I don't ever want to be put in this position again where you guys have to decide to silence me because I'm just doing stuff that's hurting you. And I haven't since then. I've not said a single bad thing about Alpha. And we've gotten an official word, apparently. This was posted 2 days ago on the Geek and Sundry Reddit, and I'll summarize it, but it's basically all the people with Alpha subscriptions. They got an email that read, "Dear valued Alpha member, we regret to announce that effective March 31st, 2019, we will be closing Alpha." And it goes on from there. I don't want to read the entire thing because that's the really important part. Alpha's gone. It's dead. It ends in a month. And nobody is surprised. Because it's ending, that's why I'm talking about it now, because I can't really say anything bad about it that will hurt Alpha, I guess, because Alpha's already dead. So now I feel like I can speak freely about it. Like I said, I've made multiple videos about this where Alpha was the embodiment of the idea of leaving money on the table. And I have a whole video on that if you want to watch it. And it was just, it was a way for them to monetize this audience more. And it was not done, they pitched it as this, oh, well, we want to offer you more stuff. And they also would pitch in, oh, well, we need the extra money because Twitch takes too much. And no, it was all malarkey. It was just a way for them to make more money, is what it was. And that doesn't work. In the business world, you have two different things that you have to kind of focus on in order to run a successful business. You need short-term gains because that's what pays your immediate costs, your rent, your payroll, things like your electricity bill, things that you're not able to kind of put off or pay large enough in advance that you don't have to worry about it for 6 months to a year. Those are monthly costs. That's supported by your short-term gains. The other thing you have to focus on is long-term investments and the returns on those. One of the big things in business is what's called return on investments. And it's a really important part of running a business because you will invest money in everything. Hiring an employee is an investment for a company. And you want to get a return on that investment that's positive, meaning you spent, and you actually spend a lot of money to hire someone. It's a lot more expensive than you'd think due to training and taxes on them and the mistakes that they will make just because they're learning and things like that. Like hiring someone costs you a lot of money. So that's a very small investment compared to things like creating new services like Alpha. Alpha was a massive investment. They funneled tons of money. And so as a businessman, you look at the return on the investment. How much money does it make compared to how much did it cost? And it always needs to be positive. And in general, return on investment has to be positive by so much. You never want to just break even or make like $100. That's not an effective way to invest your money. So generally, you'll have a return on investment of something like 10 to 15%. Generally, tends to be a very common number that you hear, and that means the projected return on investment has to be a minimum of 10% of the money you put into it, in order for them to greenlight the program. And then when you do get to the point where you actually have real data where you can see how much you've invested, if it doesn't meet expectations, it may get canceled. That's not what happened with Alpha. I can't even remember the guy's name anymore, but I said in one of my earlier videos, Alpha was the brainchild of somebody at Legendary, above both Nerdist and Geek and Sundry. He was relatively high up. And it was his idea from when the Twitch channel launched. He wanted to use the Twitch channel to get Alpha running. And that's the reason why Zach, the original head of the Twitch channel, left and formed HyperRPG, which is one of my favorite Twitch channels on Twitch right now. If you don't watch them, you need to. And it's the reason why they had massive turnover because a lot of people didn't agree with it. And a lot of very smart people could see this was not a smart investment. It was never going to be good because it was fracturing the audience. It was putting things behind paywalls that were created by a company that's initial purpose was to bring people together, not cut them apart. Combine that with Alpha didn't have the visibility, the searchability that Twitch had or YouTube had, so you couldn't get what's called organic growth from it, which is where people just kind of walk in. For a restaurant, if you're on a major highway or roadway, you can get what's called walk-in traffic. It's organic growth. People just see your sign, go, I'm hungry, I'm going to go there. And that is essential to a business running. You have to have some organic growth. The less organic growth you have, the more you have to spend on marketing, and the more you have to focus on new customer acquisition. Alpha didn't have that. There was literally no way for them to get organic growth beyond word of mouth. And the products that they put out were not amazing enough to funnel word of mouth. And when I say that, I don't mean that they weren't making good products. Things like Shield of Tomorrow was really, really popular and was a really quality product. Relics and Rarities was created for Alpha and is now going over to Twitch. Really high quality stuff. If you look at the Alpha content, it's all very high quality, but it's going into an oversaturated market. If you think about streamed tabletop RPG shows, the first one you should think about is Acquisitions Incorporated, because they're the ones that really got it running. Then you have things like Encounter Roleplay. You have D&D themselves runs, Sirens of the Realm, the one with Holly Conrad and Pro Jared and Anna Prosser. I can't remember what it's called now. But that's a really good one. Acquisitions Incorporated, the C Team is run through D&D, I think it is, or maybe it's just Penny Arcade. Yeah, I mean, there's just tons of these shows, and they're not all D&D. You literally can find just about every system out there in various stages of quality, from stuff like what I do, which I would say is relatively low quality. I mean, I have overlays and I have a good, a decent sound system for me, but not all my players do, and we rely on Roll20, which their video chat sucks. So I would rank mine on the low end of quality, and then you have all the way up to the stuff that D&D is putting out, and other channels, like the stuff that Adam Colbill does for Roll20 and his other stuff. He puts out really high quality stuff. Dice Camera Action, that's the D&D show with Pro Jared and Holly Conrad. So they had good quality product. Don't get me wrong. They didn't have something that was so amazing that it separated them from everything else on there. They had good quality product. They didn't have anything incredibly innovative. And the few kind of innovative things that they did do, like they did a live science fiction show, which I thought was interesting, but it was a sitcom. Like, it was literally the exact thing you would see on TV. They had a studio audience. They had multiple cameras, and they recorded it live. It was just a live sitcom. It wasn't really that mind-bending, other than the fact that people weren't doing that on Twitch. But again, you have all of television that does that. So nothing they did was groundbreaking. Nothing they did was impressive enough that they could rely on word of mouth to get organic growth. And that's what I'm saying. It's not that they didn't create good content, but because they had no other way to get organic growth, it was impossible for them to grow. And word of mouth will only give you good growth if you are doing something monumental, if you are changing things. Then word of mouth works great. But unfortunately, they simply weren't. They were creating good content, not groundbreaking content. So that happened for a while. Again, they lost a bunch of people at the Geek and Sundry Twitch because they were screwing them over royally. And then Marisha got involved, and this is why Alpha survived until March of this year. I have to say, it had to be Marisha. I think I mentioned in one of my other videos, if Alpha is going to do well with Marisha at the helm, they need to stop dictating what she's allowed to do and just let her do what she wants to do, because she's passionate, and that's what they need. They don't need corporate people, trying to figure out what works best. They need passionate people creating things that they love, and I think that's what Marisha did. And it did well. I think Alpha, because Alpha had a super rough launch. It was losing money hand over foot until after Marisha took control. And I don't think it ever actually made a profit. But once Marisha took it over and started doing things, and the Critical Role cast started supporting it because Marisha was a part of it, and there was other members of the cast that were getting really involved in it. I think that's when it started looking like there was some promise there, and that's the reason it lasted this long. For those of you that don't know, the end of or maybe it's mid-February, Critical Role announced that they were severing ties with Geek and Sundry amicably. They weren't. There was no bad blood or anything, but they were going entirely to broadcasting on their own Twitch channel, uploading to their own YouTube channel, everything like that. They had their own set, their own studio for like 9 months at this point. They got it I think summer of last year. And so the writing was kind of on the wall. My personal theory about what happened, because what basically happened was Tuesday on Talks Machina, back in February, they announced, hey, by the way, the show on Thursday, is in 2 days away, won't be broadcast on Geek and Sundry. It'll be broadcast on Critical Role's Twitch. And that was the only warning anybody got, was 2 days before it happened. Oh, by the way, this has happened. My theory is they were under contract that they weren't allowed to say anything, which is why the Search for Grog one-shot wasn't immediately uploaded. And they couldn't tell us when it was going to be uploaded. They were, I'm going to almost guarantee, they were under contract that basically said, hey, if we don't, if we don't renew this contract, you guys aren't allowed to say it's ending until its end. It's kind of an NDA kind of thing. And I'm assuming that's what happened. I also think the Alpha people thought that they might be able to get Critical Role to come back or sign on for another season, because the Critical Role guys have a lot of love for Geek and Sundry. That's where they got their start and everything like that. And so they thought they might be able to leverage that. That's just a theory, but I'm betting they thought they might be able to leverage that to get more. And as soon as Critical Role pulled out, Geek and Sundry started losing massive amounts of followers. Alpha subscriptions started to drop. Geek and Sundry subscriptions started to drop. Everyone that had joined, because a vast majority of the people that subscribed to Alpha did it because Talks Machina After Dark, which is an Alpha only, extra 15 minutes of Talks Machina, and Critical Role had a special overlay where they could see, you know, hit points live and stuff like that. So they had like an improved version of Critical Role. Most people subscribed to Alpha for that. When that was gone, there was no reason for them to subscribe to that anymore. It was just a waste of time. So, that happened in mid-February. They just sent out the email, I'm assuming a couple days ago, saying that Alpha was over. For the most part, I'm happy. It sucks that the people that worked for Alpha, and I'm not talking about the hosts, because the hosts really are not in that bad a position. If their shows got canceled, they'll be able to get on other shows. I'll guarantee that. And a lot of their shows didn't get canceled. They're just moving to Geek and Sundry's Twitch. So it's not the host that I'm worried about. There were people that worked for Alpha that didn't work for Geek and Sundry, that no longer have jobs because Alpha simply doesn't exist. And there are people that were pulling double duty that are going to see pay cuts and work hour reductions because they no longer have Alpha to do. And that that's sad. It's always sad when people lose their jobs. But to be blunt, Alpha was a bad idea from the start. It was never going to be something good. It was simply a way for them to try and bleed money out of an audience that was already willing to give them all the money that they needed. I don't know if a lot of people remember when the Geek and Sundry Twitch first launched, they weren't given a budget enough to buy essential parts for the studio to run. So they made an Amazon wish list, and chat bought them a significant portion of the equipment that they used to run the channel. So it was never a question of are the Geek and Sundry fans willing to support the channel? They are. If you ask them for money, they would give it to ridiculous amounts. So it was never an issue that they didn't want to support them or they weren't supporting them. Alpha was just them going, hey, I bet you we could get even more money if we did this. And that's not a good idea. It is focusing on short-term gains over long-term investments. And it's a very common thing you see in business right now is everyone focusing on short-term gains. It started during the Great Recession back in, 2010? I want to say 2009, 2010, shortly after Obama took office, which it wasn't his fault. That's how economics works, is roughly every 20 years we have a recession, and this one just hit hard because of bad business practices. What happens is during a recession, you stop focusing on long term, you focus on the short term so you can make it out of the recession. But as soon as the recession's over, generally you have to shift back to long term focus or else your business goes belly up. And we never got that in this current economic cycle. We are in a growth period. We're doing very well right now, but businesses are still focusing on short-term goals. And that's what Alpha was, short-term gains. Let's get as much money from them as quickly as possible. And it's my personal belief, this is not supported by anything but my own thoughts, that the idea behind Alpha and the Geek and Sundry Twitch was legendary, was trying to build the brand up as big as it could get and make as much money as they can before they either sold it or just got rid of it, which is an incredibly common business practice. Look at, I believe it's EA. They sit there and they will buy up all these small companies and small developers. They will get all of their IPs and stuff out of them, make as much money as they can in the short term, and then close the studio. And they've done that over and over and over again. And it's not an uncommon business practice. You see it all over. So that, to me, that's what Alpha was them trying to just bleed the fan base for as much money as they could before they closed everything. And Critical Role changed things, because Critical Role is a brand. Critical Role is a huge moneymaker. And now that they actually have control over their own funds, I think it's going to be very surprising to them when they realize how much money they weren't getting. And that was going directly to Legendary, only for them to say, hey, we can only afford to give you this much. I think they're going to be blown away with just the massive amount of cash that's just flowing into the company that allows them to do the really cool stuff that they want. You know, building a MAME cabinet is not cheap. And a lot of the other things that they're doing, you know, with editing time and stuff like that, like, they're not doing cheap stuff over on Critical Role. And now that they have access to all the money that was being flooded into, or a lot of the money, not all of it, that was being flooded into Alpha and into Geek and Sundry's Twitch that went directly to Legendary, I think they're going to be surprised. So anyway, final thoughts. Alpha was a massive mistake. I said when it first launched, it's going to die. Critical Role is the only thing that's going to keep it afloat. It's going to operate at a loss and draw funds from the Twitch channel. And then it's going to close. And it's going to upset a lot of people. It's exactly what happened. I'm not sad to see it go. I hope it's been a learning experience for Legendary. I hope the guy who it was his brainchild, that I can't remember him, I hope he gets fired, because he was an asshat. 100%. He was a horrible human being, did not deserve to have the job that he did, caused innumerous amounts of harm to Geek and Sundry's brand, and does not need to have a job. He needs to go back to any other field and learn how to actually do a job well. Beyond that, I'm super happy for Critical Role. I'm happy they have complete control over their brand now. Without getting people upset, I think they're going to be in for a slightly rude awakening, or they may have already had it now that they've been running stuff out of their own studio for a little while. Because I don't think they have a lot of really good business minds. I think Rachel, I can't remember Rachel's last name, she's their marketing person. I think she has got a brilliant business mind, and I think if they aren't already, I think they're going to have to really lean on her for business stuff, because she's really brilliant. She is. I don't think Marisha has the business experience to run Critical Role. Like when she was running Alpha, she was the creative director. So she made creative decisions, but she didn't have to deal with things like return on investment, things like what marketing budget does she need to allocate to this. Other really boring stuff like accounting stuff and all that stuff that as a business owner, you have to know, but as a creative director, you don't. So I actually don't know, as far as like business people, who all Critical Role has other than Rachel. And the only reason I know that is that Rachel was kind enough to reach out to me multiple times, and she's been a wonderful person thus far. She used to work for Legendary. She moved over to work for Critical Role, and my personal opinion is that she's one of the reasons Critical Role is flourishing as well as they can, because as much as the entire cast are brilliant and make a phenomenal product, that's not all you need to be a successful business. You need business acumen, and Rachel's got it in spades. So, yeah, I'm interested to see where Critical Role goes. Super happy that we can stick a fork in Alpha. I'm worried that this will also mean the end of the Geek and Sundry Twitch channel. But again, I will not be incredibly upset about that either. Mostly because Geek and Sundry has changed from what I loved to a tool for making money. Does that mean that the hosts are all there for making? No, the hosts are the same hosts that they've had for a while. And they care about making a good product. But Geek and Sundry itself doesn't. Felicia Day's no longer involved. The majority of the people that made the Twitch channel what it was, and this amazing, wonderful place to meet people and create a loving community, they don't work for Geek and Sundry anymore. And the hosts are wonderful. I love Erica is probably one of the most wonderful people in the world. Becca is terrifying, and so I will never say anything bad about her. I'm kidding. Becca's great. To be honest, I think those are the only two hosts. Oh, and then obviously Steph is still there with the game that they run the same time that I run the TBD RPG, so I never get to watch it. And Gina is wonderful and amazing, but Gina was not part of the original crew. Amy is one of the old school Geek and Sundry people. She is literally one of the nicest people in the world. So this is not a commentary on the host or anyone that you see. This is a commentary on Geek and Sundry itself as a brand, as a company. I don't think it's the company I fell in love with. And I unfortunately think that now that Critical Role was keeping Geek and Sundry afloat. And that is due to bad business decisions, 100%. Without Critical Role, Geek and Sundry was actually making and growing. Obviously, Critical Role was doing great things for the Twitch channel. Don't get me wrong, but they had a lot of really good things that was building community and creating a thriving community that would support Geek and Sundry Twitch, and they're not anymore. They haven't been for a while. Again, not a knock on the hosts, just bad business. So I do think that with the closure of Alpha and Critical Role going to their own thing, I sincerely expect the Twitch channel not to end immediately, but I think unless there's a change up in their management, I think Geek and Sundry Twitch will follow Alpha within the next year and a half ish. Because again, the Twitch channel is much easier to keep afloat than Alpha was, because Alpha was just a massive waste of money, and the Twitch channel was supporting it. So now that it doesn't have Alpha bleeding funds from it to keep Alpha running, there's a good chance that the Twitch channel will be able to last longer. But it's just not, as it is today, it is not sustainable in my personal opinion. Not because their content isn't good or anything like that. It's because the focus on the company is money, beyond creating a loyal customer base, which is a very common business practice right now. It's the reason we have small businesses closing all over, and even large businesses are shutting doors like there's no tomorrow. It's because they're not building loyal customer bases. And they're focusing on short-term gains versus long-term investments. And now Zordon wants me. So yeah, that's my opinion. It's long, but yeah, this is. I have felt very, very bad and very, very strongly about Alpha since its inception. I've hated keeping my mouth shut about this because I felt very strongly that I should be speaking out about this because of what's happening to the Twitch channel now. Because of Alpha bleeding them for so long, there's a good chance they're going to shut down. In my opinion, again, just an opinion. And if we had killed Alpha faster, there's a good chance that Geek and Sundry might have been able to recover. And there's still a chance it could. It just will take massive change. And I don't think Alpha is going to be the slap in the face Legendary needs to realize that they're screwing this up. So that's why I spoke out about this. And the reason I didn't was I gave my word to people that I greatly admire that I would not talk bad about Alpha and do something that would harm it. I can't harm it anymore, so now I don't feel bad talking about how it was always a bad idea and it was never going to work. So anyway, I'd like to hear from you guys. I know parts of my audience were huge Alpha supporters, and I know there are parts of my audience that hated Alpha, and then there are parts that have no idea what it is I'm talking about. If you had any experience with Alpha at all, whether you subscribed, whether you refused to subscribe, let me know in the comments. Let me know your feelings about what's going on. Because whether or not the Geek and Sundry Twitch remains is going to depend entirely on the fans. And whether or not we want to give Legendary a second chance. In tandem with that, Legendary has to get their shit together. They have to realize what it was that Geek and Sundry was founded on. They have to figure out. They have to stop focusing on the quote-unquote bottom line. They need to stop focusing entirely on short-term gains and start doing things that technically cost them money but build them a loyal customer base. I cannot tell you how many stores I was able to turn around because I stopped having the store focus on let's get as much money out of every customer we can and started actually sending customers away without buying anything, because I knew they would come back and buy even more from us because they trusted me. And Legendary doesn't get that. They don't realize that spending money on a show that's not making a profit but is building a rabid fan base, an incredibly loyal fan base that will follow the show no matter what, is important and is worth losing profit over. Because when you do find that critical role or that tabletop or that the guild that does make money and can be profitable, you need to have a loyal fan base there to support it. Anyway, that's all for me today, and I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.